And it's time to look at money on a Monday. The South African fraud landscape has increased significantly over the past 3 years. The most significant challenges that the Southern African Fraud Prevention Services has had to deal with are these: impersonation fraud, money muling, and forged documentation. According to SAFPS, money muling incidents increased by 62% compared to the year before. That is the biggest issue on the landscape at the moment. And until I read my notes for this morning's program, I'd not heard or read the phrase money muling. I suspect that there is a connection to a phrase that I do know, drug muling, where some person who is not the obtainer or the final market for the drugs is persuaded by intimidation or by an offer of money or both to carry drugs and on their supposedly innocent person. Manie Van Schalkwyk is the CEO of the Southern African Fraud Prevention Service. Manie, good morning. I mean, how does money muling work?
Good morning, John, and thank you for inviting me to your show. I think that it is very similar to what you explained in terms of drug muling, but the how it works is the banks, I think, became very sophisticated in terms of their biometric verification when accounts are open. So the fraudsters are looking for people who have got biometrics and who can be verified against the Department of Home Affairs. They are then asked to open a bank account. They hand over the information as well as a cell phone number so that the handlers can have access to all the PIN codes and the bank, and they take over that bank account completely. And our counterparts in the UK has done some research on money muling, because this is just not a South African issue, and they linked money muling directly with drug trafficking, human trafficking, and terrorism. So it's quite a significant problem.
And the reason why people will agree to the request to set up a bank account, which is then taken over by the fraudsters, are there still people who are naive and generous of spirit enough to do that? Because surely a stranger or a sort of vague acquaintance asking you to do something like that should sound 100,000 alarm bells.
Yes, of course, but it's not as straightforward as one thinks. There are various ways that mules are recruited. One is, as you said, you just confront somebody in the street and say, I need to transfer money to my mother who's sick in Zimbabwe, and the bank doesn't want to give me a bank account. Can you help? And I'll pay you handsomely for it. It sounds like an innocent issue. The other ways is mules are recruited on social media. And the third one, people get into relationships with people, and as soon as that relationship is strong enough, they would ask for favor. One would never underestimate the extent that these handlers and fraudsters will go to lay their hands on and move money of large extent.
Just looking at money muling and the stats over the last couple of years, 2021, it was sort of 1 in 5 fraud incidents reported to your institution, 1 in 3 in 2022, and 4 out of 10 in the first few months of this year. So, when you see that increase, it makes you think that this is a successful way of moving fake money, as it were, fraudulently.
Yes, totally. And I think hence what we're trying to do is to warn the mules themselves, because it looks like an innocent crime, if I can say, if I use that first example where my mother is sick and I need to transfer money. But the mules don't realize the consequences. And the consequences is that once you are listed as a fraudster on SAFPS, you've taken out of the financial system for at least 10 years, and most probably out of the job system for 10 years. So there are severely consequences to mules, which they don't realize at the time, and we need to make them aware that this is not coming without consequence.
Are these people being caught in any significant way? And has the Has the percentage of people caught and prosecuted increased along with the number of people that are getting involved, the number of these incidents being reported?
Yeah, I can't answer that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We don't get involved into that length.
Okay.
Our responsibility and mandate stops in terms of the database that we run, where people, if I mean people, the banks and the retailers and cell phone companies and insurance companies warn each other about fraudulent conduct, and therefore we don't take it that one step further in terms of law enforcement.
Okay, because I watch quite a lot of sport, and I'm forced to watch the ads in between the sport. If somebody came up to me in the street and said, I want to send some money to my mother in Zimbabwe, I would say, there's Makuru for that. Because that is the ad that one sees over and over again. And also, running rampant, according to your latest stats, is impersonation fraud.
Yes. Yes, we saw significant data breaches, not only last year, but 2 years before that. And I remember 2020, one of the major credit bureaus got compromised, the data got compromised. And last year, one of the major credit bureaus, the data got compromised. And what we are seeing is evidence that the data is used. The data is used to try to open new accounts, try to be used to take over accounts. So the data is not dormant somewhere. It's used by fraudsters, and we need to alert consumers to be super vigilant when it comes to their data. And if I was any person, I would make sure that I see my credit bureau record, that I understand what is going on there, because that credit bureau record will tell you if there are accounts open, which maybe you didn't apply for, and then you are a victim of identity theft.
No, I mean, there have been two high-profile public figures who've come forward over the last while and said we've been scammed not by these two methods that you've been talking about, but the former public protector, Tuli Madonsela, and then more recently Helen Ziller of the DA have come forward.
Yes.
And it's an indication of how clever the fraudsters are, that two very in touch with the world intelligent women were caught out by fraudsters.
Absolutely. And I just want to make a mention, because I think you allude to that, is that they were both caught up in scams. And we make a small, a subtle nuance difference between fraud and scams.
Okay.
And in the sense that scams is the art, those people develop the art to convince people. And we are, after they convince us, we hand over our cash, or we hand over our bank details, or we hand over money for an investment which doesn't exist. And those are scams. And we just launched a product which is free to the public called YIMA, and it's spelled YIMA, and it means stop or halt or slow down in Zulu and Xhosa. And we want to raise awareness for people regarding scams, and we create a platform where consumers can list their scams, and we took a leaf from a company in the UK and the Netherlands, and we developed these products, yima.org.za, where in the UK they closed about 100,000 websites last year, scammed websites.
Okay. Sorry, we're out of time, Manie. YIMA.org.za.
Yes.
Thank you very much for letting us know about that, and I'm glad that my question elicited that information. Manie Van Schalkwyk, CEO of the Southern African Fraud Prevention